In this video, I am going to teach you how to start matching transactions from the Bank Feeds Center in QuickBooks Online. So in a previous video, we've already talked about how to connect these bank accounts and how to update the transactions to make sure all of your current transactions are sitting here in QuickBooks. Now, when you are selected, if you've selected any of these accounts, then you'll see the transactions here below that need to be entered. So I want to point something out. These are all transactions that have cleared the bank account, but they are not necessarily posted in QuickBooks yet. So think of this as sort of your limbo. Now, there are multiple kinds of transactions that we have here. So we have transactions that need to be matched, we have transactions that need to be viewed, and we have transactions that it wants to add. So let me quickly break down the difference between that. So matching is used when the transaction has actually been entered in QuickBooks Online before it cleared the bank account. So for example, a lot of times when we'll see this is checks. The client writes the check inside of QuickBooks Online, and then at a later date, the vendor cashes the check and it clears the bank account. QuickBooks Online is generally smart enough to say, oh, hey, I see a transaction for a date that's close to the original transaction, that's the same vendor, and that's the same amount. And when it sees that, it's going to say one match found and pull in the details of the transaction so you can quickly review them and say, yep, that seems like that is the correct transaction. I don't want to create it in QuickBooks a second time, but I want QuickBooks to recognize that, yes, that check that we wrote, that vendor that we wrote, for Hicks Hardware on December 14th for $228.75, that check did clear the bank account. And so if this is the correct transaction, you're just going to click this button here that says match. Now, sometimes you will have clients who have several transactions that are the exact same amount to the exact same vendor on very similar dates. And so sometimes QuickBooks doesn't know for sure if that's the right transaction. So if for some reason you know that this is not the right transaction, you can click on Find Other Matches, and that's basically going to expand the search right inside of QuickBooks so you can try to find the transaction that you're looking for. And obviously none of these are correct. So again, I don't know why it would even consider these as suggested matches, maybe just because of the time frame, but really the transaction is so it's 228.75. Here, let's go out here. So 228.75 is the total of this one transaction. And so if you look here, what QuickBooks is doing is it's saying, hey, all 5 of these transactions, they total up to 228.75. Did you mean to match to these? So obviously no, these are several different vendors. In this case, it doesn't make any sense. But what's fun is that we used to have to do this by ourselves. Like we used to have to sit here and try to piece together which transactions totaled up to equal this one transaction, because sometimes, obviously not with a single check, but a lot of times what will happen on the deposit side is your client will batch deposit. So like they'll have payments from, 3 checks from 3 different clients, but the total that clears the bank account is one single amount. And so you'd have to hunt around and figure out which of these transactions add up to that total amount. Or sometimes I just worked with a client who made this mistake. They'll pay the same vendor, but they'll pay several bills, and for some reason in QuickBooks Online, they recorded each bill payment separately, like as if they cut a check for each bill. But really, they cut one check for the total of the bills. And so it's nice that QuickBooks is getting a little bit more thoughtful and being like, hey, which numbers add up to this total? Maybe this is what happened. Obviously, in this case, though, not even a little bit correct. So we're going to go ahead and click match on this. Now, the other thing you're going to see is view. So when I click on view, that's because QuickBooks has found more than one possible match, and you need to review it to make sure it's right. Now, one thing I want to point out, always make sure before you get started, click on this gear icon and make sure that you have Show Bank Details and Copy Bank Detail to Memo selected. Because when you look here at this bank detail, it shows the vendor name. So the vendor name is Pam, and that's how we know that expense 76 to Pam is the correct option and not the bill payment on 12/12 for $75. But see how QuickBooks flagged them both? Because they're the same amount on almost the same date. And even though QuickBooks is kind of reading the bank detail in the memo, sometimes the vendor name isn't even in there. And so QuickBooks wants you to make sure that you've selected the correct one and then click match. So that is how you are going to match transactions in QuickBooks Online. And again, I want to reiterate, we use matching only when we've already recorded the transaction manually in QuickBooks and now it's cleared the bank account at a later date. So we don't want to create a duplicate transaction by adding it, which is what we're going to go over in the next video.